Hey guys, welcome in to another edition of Faith in Football. As always, my name is Neil and I will be your host. Hey, welcome in. Look, it's a very exciting time right now. Everybody just kicked off their training camp. We got a lot of fluff pieces that I want to talk to you about, but how to handle them, how to interpret some of them. We're going to talk about terminology and phrases that you need to know as a fantasy football player. Some of them you may have heard before. If you're new to fantasy football, first of all, welcome. Down the bottom, subscribe, like, and share, and I will be more than happy to walk you through your new introduction to fantasy football. So listen, while we do tend to lean a little bit toward the newbie side, there is still plenty of information that all of us veterans, myself included, can get out of podcasts like this or channels like this. And you might be thinking, Faith in Football, like, what is this? Well, as you're going to see, we're going to dip a little bit of faith into our football. So welcome in, sit back, enjoy the show. What are we talking about today as far as the faith aspect goes? Well, I told you we're talking terminologies and phrases. And today I chose to speak on the parables that Jesus spoke on and how he went from speaking in parables to speaking plainly to his disciples. And he didn't do this until the end of his ministry. A lot of times he tried to convey what he was trying to get across in parables. Why? Look at it like this. You're talking about Jesus Christ, who became man, came down from heaven, and is trying to explain things to human beings, to mere mortals, about heavenly things. We really can't understand that. We really don't get it. It's sort of like the terminologies and phrases that I'm going to go over in the football aspect of today's show. Some of the stuff you really don't get until you break it down, until you kind of look at it from a new perspective. You know, he spoke about faith like a mustard seed. It's like, what is the kingdom of heaven like? It is like a mustard seed where it's the smallest of seeds, but it grows to be the biggest of garden plants where birds can nest in it. It gives shelter, it gives sustenance, but it starts out very small. And that's how our faith starts sometimes. It can start very small, but it should grow into a beautiful plant, a beautiful thing to look at, to experience, to live through, and to show others the glory of God. Now, imagine you're walking with Jesus Christ and you're one of his disciples and you're hearing all these parables. Some of them you don't understand, some of them you do. And our verse today, it comes from John chapter 16, verse 33. He says, I have told you all of this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world. Now, he's speaking very plainly right now. And a few verses before this, his disciples came to him and were like, look, you're finally talking plainly to us. We finally understand. We get it. Like, it clicks. This is after 3 years of walking with Jesus Christ and going, okay, I get the mustard seed thing, and I get the scattering of the seed, where it, some of it falls on good soil and some of it falls on stony ground and some of it gets choked out by weeds. And that makes sense to me. It's something that I can wrap my head around, something I can understand. And Jesus told us this because he was speaking to the everyday man. He was speaking to people who weren't educated like the educated Pharisees and Sadducees of his time, the religious leaders who had years and years, sometimes decades of schooling, and they understood the Bible, or they understood the scriptures. but they didn't understand what Jesus was trying to tell them. They didn't understand that he was the Word become flesh. But that's what he was trying to explain throughout his entire ministry, was that he was it. It says in the beginning of one of the Gospels, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. That's him. So he tells us in the end of John chapter 16, he's told us all of this. Why? It says, so you may have peace in me. Now, how much do we go through our daily life without peace? We're stressed out, we're worried, we're concerned, we're frustrated, we're angry. We're at a loss, and we're walking around just basically stumbling in the dark. Remember that Jesus is the light that will bring direction to that darkness. He will bring direction to your life if you only ask him. So I want you to go forward today, whenever you're watching this video, whenever you tune into this channel, and down the bottom, subscribe, like, and share, and you can have this all the time with you and be notified when I post new videos. But I want you to remember that as you go forward, that God always says that you will have many trials. You're going to have sorrows. He doesn't deny that. He never tells us everything's going to be peachy keen, everything's going to be okay. He never tells us everything's going to be all right. What he tells us is that he will never leave us nor forsake us, that he will always be there with us. He will always walk through with us. Remember, there's a Bible verse that everybody knows, that yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Now, I want you to keep this in mind when you're walking through a hard time today, or this week, or this month, that it says, yea, though I walk through, not yea, though I stay in the valley of the shadow of death, not yea, though I sit down and just rest here and just lay down and die and quit, and this is where I'm at. This is where I stay. It says, yea, though I walk through. That means that you're going somewhere else, that God is bringing you somewhere else. He's not going to let you stay here. That the hard times and the sorrows are going to come. They're going to be present. They're going to happen to you. At the very end, remember this, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. There's nobody else you can follow. I don't care who you find on social media. I don't care what you find on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever. You're never going to find anyone on this earth who has overcome the world, let alone death itself. So remember who you're following. Look at who you're following now if you're not following Jesus. If you're not following God, remember, like I talked about last one, go with God and try with the Trinity. Remember, the first three letters in Trinity is try. You got to go through. You've got to try. You got to go. Go is 3/4 of God's name. So remember, God loves you. He's there for you, and he is willing to go with you no matter what is going on, and no matter who else abandons you, he will always be there. So I hope that was uplifting for you. I hope that it was enlightening, to say the least. And we're getting ready to go into the terms and phrases that you need to know as a fantasy football player. Before we get into it, though, of course, I got to give a shout out to my oldest and dearest sponsor, Zia of Lafayette. You can find them at 235 Ducey Road, off of Johnson Street, behind the Grand Theater. and in front of Red Laurel's gym. You can also give them a call, 337-406-0013. And remember, coming up here shortly in the month of August, if you go down, you tell them that you heard about them on Faith in Football, you'll see my face, just show them the video and tell them that Neil sent you, and you will get a free dessert or free appetizer with your choice of entree. As long as you buy an entree, you get the appetizer. Look, we're talking a whole bunch of stuff. I don't really have time to go through it all. It's just, it's awesome. Trust me on this one. Whenever you do get appetizer, please get the grit. If you like grits, you've got to try the corn grits at Zia. If I could walk around with some of these in my pocket, I could probably get half of the stuff in the city for free. They are that good. Now, if you're not into grits, then they have plenty of other sides that you can get along with the entrees. They're running a trout mock shoe right now, which is absolutely phenomenal. If you're looking more stick to your ribs type stuff, the fried red beans and rice are out of this world. The rotisserie items are outrageously good. And the ribs, they got Thai ribs. I mean, where else are you going to get Thai ribs from? Nowhere else but Zia. Trust me on this one. Go down there and get you some. Tell them I sent you. Get your free appetizer there as well. Okay. So, what are some phrases or things that maybe you've been listening, maybe in between my first show and this show, you started listening to some other podcasts and you're picking up phrases and you're hearing things, you're not really sure what they are, but it sounds really important. So we're going to go through about 12 things that you need to know, and I'm going to explain a little bit about it. The types of leagues. This is very important for newbies. When you get into it, you don't want to be in the wrong style league. Okay. We have what's called redraft, dynasty, best ball, and keeper leagues. Now, keeper leagues and dynasty, I'm not going to get into a whole lot. Dynasty is just that you're building a dynasty. You keep, rather than get a different team every year, whenever you draft your dynasty team, you keep that team for the entire length of the player's career. So until you either drop them or trade them or they retire, they're yours. Keeper league, typically there's a couple of players that you can keep, hence the name, each season, and then you draft certain other players. Now, the talent pool on this is a little shallower because you've got everybody in your league keeping 2 to 3 players, so that reduces the amount of people that you have to choose from. I don't recommend this for new players. If you are looking for a challenge, dynasty and keeper leagues are definitely challenging. It's a different animal altogether, and there are a bunch of different podcasts that you can listen to. I've recently started listening to the Dynasty Nerds. Those guys I love the chemistry that they have and the topics that they speak on. Fantasy Pros, I've mentioned before, also has a Dynasty podcast, so check them out. And my boys, the Ballers, the fantasy footballers, Andy, Mike, and Jason, they have a podcast as well. You just have to subscribe to it. So check them out if you want to challenge yourself. If you played redraft, which is another one I'm about to talk about. If you played redraft, you played best ball before, you know what I'm talking about. You kind of maybe thought about it, but you never really had the guts to go ahead and do it. I've done it. Trust me, it is dangerously addictive. Dynasty, keeper leagues as well. So have fun with that. But typically your newcomers, you're going to fall into one of two categories. Either you're going to play redraft, which you're basically drafting a new team every single year. This is what you usually play with your buddies, whether it be your family, friends, your buddies at work, what have you. Or if you just go on an app, I myself, I've said it before, use the sleeper app. Yes, I'm currently, my turn to pick. We got a long draft. This is a dynasty league that I'm drafting in, so we got some time. I'll do my pick after the draft or after the video that I wrap up here. But anyway, but yes, the sleeper app is awesome. The Ballers have a community that you can get involved with if you're a subscriber to the show, where they have a bunch of different leagues that you can get in with people who are like-minded. It's a lot of fun, so check them out. But redraft is typically what we're going to talk about on this show. Best ball is real easy. All you basically have to do is draft. Once you draft your team, that's it. That's the end of the story. It's whoever you have, and the computer makes the decision for you. So there's no keeping up with it throughout the season. There's no head scratching going, who do I start? This guy's facing a really good offense, but they're missing their starting cornerback. So, the wide receiver might go. There's none of that stuff. All it is you draft your players that you think are going to have these outstanding weeks, and then the computer just picks whoever's best that week. So if one of your guys has an off week, that's fine. They're not getting counted, and you don't have to worry about missing out on starting them or benching them. This is good for people who want to maybe get into redraft leagues, but you don't have a league that you can join right now. If you want to get live, you want to go, with people that are close to you that either you're going to work with or you are related to. So next up, types of scoring. There's basically 3 types of scoring. You have standard scoring, what's called PPR, and then what's called HPPR. Now, standard scoring is just that there's a base level. There's no frills. It can be customized, but you have to check your league that you're going to be in to find out what the scoring is going to be. And as I did on the previous show, I will recommend that you definitely look at the scoring before you draft, because it can affect your draft strategy depending upon what the scoring is. PPR, that's what a lot of people are moving to. That is the big thing right now in the fantasy world, is people moving to the PPR style scoring, which means it stands for points per reception, which means that anytime someone catches a pass, they get a point. Normally, it takes you about 10 yards if you're a running back, 25 if you're a quarterback or a wide receiver, to get 1 point. That's your standard scoring. When it's PPR, the volume of a player comes into play a lot more than production. So if they're really targeted, if you have, like last year, Najee Harris led the league in receptions for running backs. Pittsburgh threw more than anybody else in the NFL last year because Ben Roethlisberger, he just wanted to throw the ball a lot. Why? I don't know, because he didn't do it very well. He had a noodle arm as the last year of his career, and he shouldn't have been throwing. But that's my opinion. But because Najee Harris had such a drastic difference or drastic volume increase over everyone else, he was a very valuable running back to have on your squad. So he got a point for, I think he had 75. Vet me on this one, because I'm trying to remember this number off the top of my head. I think he had like 75 receptions. That's not going to happen again. So that's not going to happen this year. I will almost guarantee that one, because it's Mitch Trubisky. It's a new offense coming in. It's not going to happen. There's not going to be a need to have it happen. Ben Roethlisberger was a dump down guy. He loved to dump the ball off to running backs. He didn't have a real downfield presence. Mitch Trubisky is not like that. Mitch is going to either pass it deep or he's going to take off running. That's just his game. Okay. And understanding things like this help you out in your drafting. But that's PPR. PPR, points per reception. You're going to get 1 point, and that's for tight ends, running backs, wide receivers who are going to catch a ball, and that's it. If they catch the ball at the line of scrimmage and they get hit and they don't get any yardage, at least they got 1 point. So a lot of people like the PPR scoring. I myself love the PPR scoring. I wasn't a big PPR guy until a couple of years ago, but it's definitely entertaining and a lot of fun to play with. Half PPR is exactly that. You get a half a point for catching the ball as opposed to a whole point. This is for those in-betweeners. I look at it this way. You're either all or nothing. You're either give me a point, don't give me a point. this half stuff, I'm not about that, but that's just me. Some people like playing it. Some people like playing the half PPR. A lot of your podcasts are going to base their analysis and their stats off of a half PPR scoring rather than a full PPR scoring, to kind of give a balance between standard and PPR. They're going to cut that right down the middle. And so there's not too much discrepancy for player stats. Another thing that you may have heard in talking about the positions is wide receiver 1, running back 1, quarterback 1, things like that. You have RB1, RB2, RB3, and what they're talking about is this. Typically, league is made up of 12 teams. So your top 12 guys are your whatever ones. Then 13 through 24 are your whatever twos. So like if you have a guy who's ranked 14th at running back, he's a running back 2 because he falls between 13 and 24. Now 25 through 36 is going to be your RB3 or your wide receiver 3. RBs in RB3, you're basically just taking a dart throw. It's at the end of the draft. It's nothing really that you have to worry about. It's a gut feeling. It's, you call your shot, take a flyer, however you want to phrase that. So, just take a chance. So while we're talking about taking chances, I took a chance on a guy that I knew, that I worked with while he was studying. And I encourage you guys, if you were in the Lafayette, Louisiana area, or if you're just passing through and you need a little tighten up on the hair, see the fresh cut, it's still holding, still got the hard part. So my boy Nick Reed hooked me up on this. You can go see Nick at Parish Aligned Barbershop. It's right off Ambassador Caffrey, right behind Charlie G's, if you're not familiar with the area. Give him a call. You can call him at 337-456-9062 and tell him that Neil from Faith and Football says hi. And really enjoying my cut. I do need to go see him about my beard though. So, he does do really, really good beard work. I work with a couple of guys who go to him. They're a little follically challenged up top, but down here they got a killer beard going on, and Nick takes care of them, whether it's up top or right here as well. So go see my boy Nick Reed and tell him we said hey. All right. Next up, snake and linear. These are the direction that the draft goes. Now, I showed you on here. This is my draft right now. This is a snake draft. Now, a snake draft, this is what it refers to. Let's just say that you've got 12 guys in your league, you're going to go 1 to 12 and then 12 to 1. So first round, if you have the number 1 pick overall, you've got to wait all that time before you pick again. A linear draft typically is used more in dynasty drafts. It's basically to reward or help balance bad teams to give them a better shot at getting better. So if you have the first overall pick in the first round, you're going to get the first overall pick in the second round as well, and every round thereafter. That's very, very easy to think about. Now, along with the snake and the linear, you're going to have different strategies when you draft. You have what's called a 0 RB or a hero RB strategy. A lot of people who go 0 RB, it basically is direct correlation to the spot in which you're drafting. So if you are in a 12-team league and you have maybe, let's say, the top 4 picks, that's great. But what happens when you have the back half of the draft, when you have picks 7 through 12? these are the guys who usually implement the zero RB strategy. A zero RB strategy is going with no running backs until maybe rounds 3 or 4. Now, this is also called the running back dead zone, is normally rounds, some people say 4 to 7, some people say 3 to 6, because you've got so many guys that are jumbled up in there that are basically the same. Their talent is the same, their opportunity is the same, their production is pretty much going to be the same as far as their projection. It's not guys like Christian McCaffrey, like Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon. Those guys are top upper echelon running backs. And you're only going to get these guys if you have the early draft picks. You're going to get Jonathan Taylor right now only if you have the 1 or the 2. And then you're going to get Christian McCaffrey. Then a lot of people are having a choice to make. Do you want to go with one of the number 1 wide receivers, or do you want to go with a third best running back? Now, those are called hero RB strategies, where you get the hero, the best running back that you possibly can get in the league. If you get one of these guys, you're not going to get that upper echelon wide receiver. And this is where your scoring comes into play. I talked before about the PPR and the half PPR and the standard. In a standard scoring league, running backs are extremely valuable. So you're looking for that 1 through 4 pick. You're looking for those guys back half of the second round that have fallen. Your wide receivers are going to be more plentiful for you in a standard scoring league because they're not as valuable as they would be in a PPR league. Because wide receivers by nature catch more passes than running backs, your wide receivers are extremely valuable in a PPR scoring format. Now, guys like Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, some people say Joe Mixon this year, who are heavily involved in the passing game. Those guys are very valuable because you get the best of both worlds. You get not only a upper echelon running back, but you also get an upper echelon wide receiver. So there's a lot of upside there. But with your zero RB, you're looking to get the top, the creme de la creme of wide receivers, not only with your first pick, but with your second, because you're going to have a shorter time when you come back around. You're going to get, I don't know, if you have, let's say the 4th or the 5th pick in a 12-team league, and you get Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, and then you come back around and you get a second round wide receiver, and then you wait for the 3rd round to pick up a guy like David Montgomery, who isn't really a sexy pick, but he's very steady. He's going to get you some production. So next up, punting the position. Now, this can get really frustrating. And a lot of people punt the position without knowing that they punt the position. And when I say that, this usually refers to quarterbacks and tight ends, because you're going through your draft, and let's say that you missed out on Mahomes and Josh Allen and Justin Herbert. Those are your top 3 fantasy quarterbacks. So you're like, okay, well, I don't know, I'll just grab Matt Stafford a little later. And then you think you can get him in the 7th, and he winds up getting taken in the 5th. And you're just like, man, it's not really, I don't like Tua from Miami. Jalen Hurts is already gone. Really wasn't thinking about him, and you wind up with somebody like Carson Wentz. Okay. That's punting the position. You're basically kicking the can down the road, and you're taking all these running backs and wide receivers, and you're forgetting to get the really good quarterback that you wanted. Now, sometimes it's on purpose. I myself have done mock drafts and actually even leagues where I've punted the position of tight end sometimes by choice and sometimes just because that's what the draft gives me. And I'm going to talk about that on another episode about how you need to stay fluent with your draft. One thing that I definitely need you guys to remember is that you need to stay fluent with, if you're in the area, with one of my other sponsors, and that would be Keller's Bakery, because they stay fluent throughout the entire year. They have a variety of things throughout the year that you can choose from. Sweets, just blow your mind type sweets. Their pies are phenomenal. I got some last year. I got a pecan pie, and it's pecan, not pecan. Okay. Pecan is what peas come in. A pecan falls off trees, kind of like a walnut. For those who don't know, if you're in the South, you have to say pecan, or people look at you crazy. Trust me, I know, I've done it. But anyway, I got a pecan pie for Thanksgiving. It was absolutely phenomenal. My wife loved it. Kids loved it. And every year when we do our draft, Keller's brings a little something sweet, those little squares that you do tastings for with wedding cakes. Phenomenal. Now, here's the thing. If you go into Keller's Bakery, and you can find them at 627 Lafayette Street off the Youngsville Highway, give them a call, 337-856-4449. If you tell them that Neil from Faith and Football sent you, you get you 2 free mini cupcakes with your order. So if you're driving by, you want to pick up some donuts for the office, you need to pick up a birthday cake, or look, guys, if you've got the anniversary and you need a cake to say happy anniversary, go down there, they'll hook you up. And while you're down there, you get a couple free mini cupcakes to eat, kind of take sweet tooth off on the way home. Okay. So check them out at 627 Lafayette Street off the Youngsville Highway. Call them up, 337-856-4449. Tell them I sent you, get you 2 free mini cupcakes, get a little hookup. Okay, guys? Talking about hookups. Look, this next thing that I'm about to talk about is the ultimate fantasy hookup for your draft. It's called stacks. I'm not talking about stacks. I'm not talking about money, making it rain. I ain't talking about that. What I'm talking about is having a quarterback and a wide receiver from the same team. Talking about guys like having Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford. Talking about having Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Talking about having guys like Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Having the number one guy with his quarterback gives you a phenomenal edge over the rest of your league. If you can hook that up, if you can make that a thing in your draft, you will have a great deal more fantasy success than you will without it. Okay. Now, when you face the guy, let's just say you don't get a stack. When you have Joe Burrow and you're facing the guy that has Jamar Chase, you're basically canceling each other out, because I don't care how big of a day Joe Burrow has, he's going to be going to Jamar Chase. I don't care how big of a day Matt Stafford has, his boy is Cooper Kupp. So, yeah, the quarterback may outscore your wide receiver, but trust me, I've seen days where the wide receiver outscored the quarterback because he was going him all the time. It's rare that it happens, yes, but I have seen it. Okay. And I would rather have both the points coming from my wide receiver and my quarterback than having that count for somebody else. And the wide receiver that I have in place of that other wide receiver doesn't perform that well. It's not a good feeling. Trust me on that one. Now, number 8, handcuffs. I'm not talking about, hands behind your head, you have the right to remain silent. I'm not talking about that kind of handcuffed, okay? I'm talking about when you have a elite running back and you get the backup. So guys like Chris Evans, who's a backup for Joe Mixon in Cincinnati. Guys like Tony Pollard, who's a backup for Zeke Elliott in Dallas. Alexander Madison, who is a backup in Minnesota for Dalvin Cook. These guys are one injury away from being the running back number 1 for that team. Now, why is that important? It's important because you get a number 1 running back in like double-digit rounds. you're talking about around 10 through whatever. You're not going to touch these guys until the double-digit rounds. You're not going to draft Alexander Mattison prior to round 10. Tony Pollard, maybe, because guys like him and Kareem Hunt have what we call standalone value, which means that by themselves, they are a fantasy commodity, but that value goes way up when their lead back gets hurt. So if Nick Chubb gets hurt, Nick Chubb, you're not going to get unless you get him in the second round sometimes, maybe even the first, depending upon your league. So you've got a guy in Kareem Hunt that you can get in like the 7th, 8th round, maybe 9th. I've seen him go even later. So you can get a guy like that to pop into that place where you had a number 2 or a second round running back on your squad. That's just good value, guys. You got to watch out for stuff like that. Okay. Especially if you roster guys like Christian McCaffrey, you want to get their backup. You want to get Deontay Foreman. You want to get Chuba Hubbard. These are guys who back him up. If you roster Joe Mixon, make it a point. Go ahead and grab Chris Evans. Okay. All he's going to do is sit on your bench. And he's an insurance policy. That's basically what a handcuff is. He's an insurance policy in case your star top flight running back gets hurt. Now, don't use this for wide receivers. You're definitely not using this for quarterbacks. You're only using this for running backs. Don't think that you're going to, draft Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis, and that's a handcuff. It's not. All it is confusion and heartache, and you don't want that on your fantasy team. Trust me. Okay. So next up, ADP and ECR. Now, these things are very similar, but they're different. ADP stands for average draft position, and ECR is expert consensus rankings. Now, ADP is usually generated by guys like me, you, whoever else you're playing with, because we're doing all of this drafting on all of these platforms, and that's generating an average draft position for whatever player it is. Okay, let's just say it's Joe Burrow, and his ADP happens to be, I don't know, they're taking him in the early 5th round. Okay, let's just sake of argument. Now, ECR, which is expert consensus rankings, which are basically the guys who are experts who get paid to do stuff like what I'm doing right now. And real quick, have you subscribed yet? Down, please just help me out, guys. Come on, just down the bottom, subscribe, like, and share. So thank you. I appreciate it. But yeah, guys like they're doing what I'm doing, but they're getting paid for it. Guys like the fantasy footballers, guys like the dynasty nerds, guys at Fantasy Pros, all of those people who are experts in the field, those are the guys who get paid to look at the stats and look at the projections and do all that stuff. And they may have a different outlook on Joe Burrow. They may value him a little higher, a little lower. So it depends on what you want to look at. Like if you're playing in your home league, it's good to look at both of them because you're going to be looking at the ADP, which is the average draft position, because that's what your buddies are looking at. Your buddies are looking at the ADP. They're looking at where whoever is going normally. So they're going to try to jump up and grab that guy. But if you look at the ECR, you can look at what these guys who are getting paid to evaluate all this stuff really think about this guy. So let's just say Gabriel Davis. Now, the fantasy world is absolutely in love with Gabriel Davis this year because there's a lot of buzz about him moving up to another tier in the wide receiver realm. That's great. But maybe the ECR guys, the experts, maybe they got a little different view on it. So take a look at that. Maybe they view him a little higher, maybe a little lower. You never know. But take a look at both before you go into your draft. when you're doing your mock drafts, look at it and kind of jot down, keep notes, who you like, who you're going after, things like that. But make sure you're staying fluent. Okay. Like I said, we'll talk about that later. Now, also what I want to talk about, if you enjoy this channel, I got another one for you. It's a little off topic, but it's definitely worth your time. Once you go to Spotify, if you don't have it downloaded, you can also, I believe, find them on Apple Podcasts. But go look up The Victory Couch with Julie and Rick Rando. They're really good people. They have a really, really sweet podcast. It's basically just a down, very, how can I say this? Very down to earth podcast. It's nothing over your head. It's just basically like sitting down with a couple of friends and chatting. So if you're looking for something to listen to on the drive to work, on the drive home from work, maybe you've had a stressful day, maybe you're going into a stressful situation, go check them out. They've got a couple of things that I think could probably help you with that stress. So go check them out. It's The Victory Couch with Julie and Rick Rando. Find them on Spotify, and I will do my best to drop the link in the description below when I post this video. So make sure you guys check them out. All right. So what I want to talk about next, number 9, recency bias. Now, I just talked about Gabriel Davis. That's definite recency bias, because the last time we saw Gabe Davis on the football field, he had over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. So that's basically what everyone has in their mind right now, is that last performance. Now, guys like Travis Etienne. You remember when Travis Etienne came out of college, everybody was buzzing about this kid. Now you hardly hear anything. Why? Because he spent the whole year on the IR. He was injured the entire year. He never played, so we never saw him. So out of sight, out of mind. But if you remember him, and you remember that he's on a really bad team that's going to be playing from behind, that's going to need some help, plus the fact that he's a really good pass catcher, and he's playing with the same quarterback that he had in college that got him to the NFL, that's a lot of positive right there. But because of recency bias, you don't remember him. But if you push that recency bias aside, then you can remember guys like Travis Etienne. If you remember that Deebo Samuel is probably not in a good situation to repeat the numbers that he put up last year, but because he did so well last year, everybody's thinking he's going to repeat. But you forget why he got where he was. Like I talked about last show, there was a lot of extenuating circumstances that got Deebo to the number 2 wide receiver spot. He ain't going to be there this year, guys, but he's still getting drafted like he will be. That's recency biased. Don't fall into that trap. Make sure you do your research and make sure you know why people got where they are. Now, talking about Deebo Samuel and the absolutely bonkers numbers that he had last year, that leads us into number 11, positive and negative regression. Now, you got guys like Deebo, Austin Eckler, who just had astronomically high touchdown numbers. They're not going to happen again. That's what you call negative regression. Then you've got guys who had really like a high level of red zone carries, like Antonio Gibson. Yeah, I think he led the league in red zone carries last year, but he really didn't have a whole lot of production. Sometimes stuff like that happens, and people forget how good these guys really are. Forget how good the opportunity is for these guys to have very similar production, but have a different result. Okay. So guys who had really low touchdown numbers last year probably won't happen this year, but guys who had really high touchdown numbers last year, again, probably won't happen this year. So I want you to look at positive and negative regression. Find that middle ground, because they're going to come up or down depending upon what they did. And what caused their outrageously high numbers or why they were so low. Maybe they had a different change of environment. And we're going to talk about that probably on the next show when I talk about environmental drafting and environmental roster management. And as far as I know, you're only going to hear that term here on this show. So make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you subscribed, liked, and shared. And we're going to get into that next on the next show. Okay. Now, like I said at the beginning of the show, everybody's starting their training camp. You're going to have a lot of what we call fluff pieces come out. Everybody's in the best shape of their career. Everybody looks awesome. It's not a whole lot of contact, but those running backs look really good. Take all of that with a grain of salt. You're also going to hear this term, PUP list or PUP. What does that mean? Right now, not a whole lot. PUP stands for physically unable to perform. Now, anybody who has a sleeper app got an update a couple days ago about the Baltimore Ravens basically putting everybody in their backfield of any importance on the PUP list. J.K. Dobbins was there, Gus Edwards was there, there was a couple of linebackers. Look, don't worry about it, because here's the thing. The rules for the PUP list are like this. Prior to the start of the regular season, any player can be put on the PUP list for any reason. And they can come off the very next day. It has nothing to do with an injury. It could be just as simple as a contract dispute. Okay, because there's guys in camp right now who are on in a contract dispute, like Deebo Samuel, who wants a long-term deal. He's there, but he's not participating in drills. He's doing, and I quote, work on the side. All that basically means is that he showed up so he didn't get fined. So when you hear about guys on the PUP list prior to the regular season, don't worry about it. It's not that big a deal. When you hear about their injury, that's a big deal. Now, in season, if the guys start that you know are going to start the year on the PUP list, guys like Michael Gallup, who is rumored to maybe start the year on the PUP list, they will miss at minimal 4 games. If they don't miss, they have to miss 4 games before they're put back on the active roster. So listen for stuff like that. Right now, you're basically ignoring probably 80 to 90% of the stuff coming out of camp because the writers are just bored. They've been spending months between the draft and now finding stuff to write about. So now any kind of action is a story, but not every story it has any kind of valid information for you as a fantasy player. So make sure you're listening to only the really negative stuff, because 9 times out of 10, that's really the only true things that are worth looking at. All the positives, kind of take them with a grain of salt, pump the brakes a little bit, and wait until we get preseason, okay? So those are the 12 things that I wanted to talk about with you guys. And I want you to remember, down the bottom, subscribe, like, and share. And as you go forward in your day, remember the scripture, Mark chapter 16, verse 33, that even though you may go through sorrows and you may go through trials and tribulations, take heart, because he has overcome the world. Guys, we'll see you next time. I appreciate your time. And remember, football is great, but God is greater. We'll see you guys next time on Faith in Football.